Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This is going to be our last week talking about the sixth commandment, where we're commanded not to murder. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that's very difficult to talk about. It's a very sensitive topic. And, I'm just going to tell you, I did not want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. I actually, in my mind, early on this week, I was already going into the seventh commandment. That's where I wanted to be. And, man, when you get hit with something that the Lord would not let go of, I know this message is supposed to come forth. And there are many details I could share with you in the process of that. But be that as it may, we are going to be talking about this subject today. You know, they say that for every one person that takes their life, an average of 6 people are impacted to the degree that they cannot function in society in the way they were accustomed to, radically flipping their world upside down. I want you to think about that. So for every one person that the devil convinces there's no hope, that nobody loves you, that there's no other way to deal with this situation, for every one person that happens to, that they buy the lie, 6 people's lives will be flipped upside down, radically. And the enemy will hurl guilt, they will hurl upon them pain and suffering. The enemy will actually try to infect these people who are broken with anger. And he will try to manipulate all of these emotions to his glory. And listen, I've seen this. I've seen the enemy work, and it's amazing. You think the enemy was just after one person. In the process, he is after a harvest. It's absolutely demonic. One of the darkest things that we can talk about is this subject. And so we're going to address this subject today through a biblical lens. And I want to begin by giving you a little bit of perspective as to what we are dealing with in our society. This is what we read, a few statistics. In 2020, almost 46,000 Americans died by suicide. Suicide is the 12th leading cause of death in the U.S. This is a problem, a significant problem. You know, put this into further perspective. Every day, approximately 125 Americans die by suicide. Every single day. There is one suicide death in the U.S. every 11 and a half minutes. That means more than 5 people are going to take their life before I'm done talking to you in this message. Put that into further perspective. There is one suicide death for every estimated 25 suicide attempts. 25-to-1 ratio. Do the math on that. Every one person. 25 had already tried. And by the grace of God, were unsuccessful. I mean, that is a radical problem. There are approximately almost 1.2 million annual attempts in the U.S., or one attempt every 27 and a half seconds. Are you feeling the weight of this war? That the devil is convincing so many people that not 30 seconds goes by where someone has bought another lie. Not 30 seconds. And I think of that in Revelation chapter 12. It says, "Woe to the inhabitants of the earth, for the devil has come down to you. Great wrath." He's come down to us in great wrath because he knows he has a short time. You want to know how short his time is? He doesn't let 30 seconds go without peddling another lie, convincing someone to take their life. Suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death for 15 to 24-year-old Americans. We're not just dealing with the top 10, we're talking about the top 3. You know what number 2 is? murder. Isn't that interesting? How the top three, 2 and 3, are directly associated to the sixth commandment. We read this: suicide is the second leading cause of death in the world for those ages 15 to 24. It's not simply an American problem. We have a global epidemic. This is a global killer. The devil has been far too successful in convincing people that they're worthless. People that they have no value, that they have no purpose in their life, that life is just not worth living, that there is no hope, there's no love. Nobody loves them. This is what the enemy is convincing them of. The devil, I look at the situation right now, we are living in a generation where the devil has wrapped humanity in a cocoon of lies and mercilessly destroying humanity. This is awful. We continue. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual kids are 3 times more likely than straight kids to attempt suicide at some point in their lives. And it goes on, medically serious attempts at suicide are 4 times more likely among the LGBTQ youth than other people. He's relentless at peddling these lies. You look at these statistics, it's interesting. A secular world can look at these same statistics and come to a completely different conclusion than someone who's rooted and grounded in truth and understands this through the Word of God. U.S. News, U.S. suicides increase in 2021 after 2 years of progress. A total of almost 1,700 more suicides occurred in 2021 than in 2020, amounting to almost 48,000 deaths by suicide overall, according to the report. Things are getting bad. And you know, this headline is almost deceptive in looking at the situation as though we've had progress and we were doing good. When in fact, when you go back to 2000 and you put all the numbers together, this is what we see. Suicide rates increased 30% between 2000 and 2018. Declined in 2019 and 2020, small margin. You look at the bigger picture, what do we see? What do we realize? We realize that we are now living in a society that is addicted to death. We're living in a culture of death. We are promoting death. You want to know what I'm talking about? I mean, it's gotten so bad, people, that we are glamorizing suicide. It's now fashionable. And may I say, people would portray it as compassionate, as mercy. This is what's being purported. This is what you would call euthanasia. This is what you would call physician-assisted suicide. And let me share with you some definitions here. I think this is going to help. Medical News Today said, what are euthanasia and assisted suicide? A doctor is allowed by law to end a person's life by painless means as long as the person and their family agree. Whereas assisted suicide, a doctor assists an individual in taking their own life if the person requests it. And so according to this definition, Medical News Today, is euthanasia, the doctor would actually be facilitating the lethal injection. The doctor would give it. In assisted suicide, he simply gives him the medication, the toxic medication, and that person takes it themselves, at home or wherever they may be. We're romanticizing the concept of suicide right now. This is what is happening. And it's being portrayed as dignity in death. It's being portrayed, and I'm not making this up, as compassion in choice. And I'm going to raise a few eyebrows here, but hear me through this. If I didn't have a relationship with Jesus, with Yeshua, if I wasn't immersed in his word and seeking his counsel on all matters, this is where I would be. I would be pushing this. I would champion this cause. Make no mistake, I would be a voice for this cause, encouraging people to take their life if that's what they wanted. Why? Because in the flesh, if somebody's suffering and they're in agony and then they want to end it and they don't want to suffer anymore, the flesh would tell you, put that to an end. Let's have mercy on this people if that's what they want. My body, my choice. This is exactly where I would be without the Lord, without the Lord's counsel. But when you go to the Word, this is what we read. Oh, let me not skip this. Let me not skip this. And then we'll go to the Word. But it says, physician-assisted suicide is legal in 11 jurisdictions: California, Colorado, District of Columbia, Hawaii, Montana, Maine, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Vermont, and Washington. And it shows you, I put this slide in here right at the last point because I wanted you to see this is already legal in parts of our country. It's legal in other countries, but the trend is growing. And again, going back to where I was, I would be promoting this. I would be out on the front lines if it were not for this. You shall not murder. You're not to take the life of another person, nor are you to take your own. This one commandment, 2 words in the Hebrew. This one commandment completely dismantles Satan's entire campaign, where he romanticizes this whole concept of suicide, whether independent or whether assisted. It's the word. It stops you dead in your tracks. It doesn't allow you to get to that point. We read in Psalm 119, and I'll put this up here with this commandment. This is my comfort and my affliction. Understand, the psalmist is suffering. He's in affliction. Where is he drawing comfort from? Is it from the counsel of the world, the ideology of the world, or is it from the counsel of the Lord? He says this, your word has given me life. It's given me life. The only way, listen to me carefully, because it's getting so dark and so twisted, and the thinking of the world is so perverse because they're being led by the devil. If you think for one moment that you have a chance of going toe-to-toe with the devil on your own, you'll never win that battle. You are outmatched, you are outgunned, you are outwitted, you will be outstrategized. You don't have the physical power, you don't have the spiritual power, you don't have the spiritual means to defend yourself. The only way you get that is by running. The name of Yeshua is a strong tower. The righteous run into it and they are saved. You have to go to the Word. That's the only way we know. The Word of God is living and powerful, sharper than a 2-edged sword, and it's a discerner of thoughts and intents of the heart. So when I have lies being pumped into my head that there's no hope, that nobody loves me, and actually because I'm suffering, and whatever I'm suffering from, there's never been a cure, the only answer is to kill myself. The only way I can combat that when I'm at my lowest is going and trusting in the Word. I don't stand a chance outside of it. We need His Word. I want to take you to the book of Job, because for those of you who see yourself in a situation of despair, for those of you who have been confronted with the lies of Hasatan, that you don't matter, that you don't have value, that there's no hope for you, that you're an utter and completely worthless failure. For those of you that have been dealing with these lies and many others, you got to go to the book of Job. This story has been preserved for you. This is the power of the Word. This is the power that will give you life. And so I want to take you to Job, and in chapter 1, what we see is Satan moves against the Lord. He goes to challenge the Lord in regard to the man Job. And Satan basically comes out and says, does Job serve you for nothing? I mean, you've abundantly blessed him. You've given him every reason to serve you. Stretch out your hand, take what he has, and he will curse you to your face. This is what Satan believed. He did believe it. He's like, Job has put his stock, his identity, in his riches. So how does the Lord respond? One of the scariest verses you will read, not just in the book, really, in the Word. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your power. Only do not lay a hand on his person. Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Well, what happened? You know, you look at this, I want you to understand how this story unfolds. The Lord gave all power to the devil over Job, except he put up a barrier and said, you just can't touch him. And when Satan went out, what did he spare? Nothing. He did not spare his oxen. He did not spare his cattle. He didn't spare his sheep. He did not spare his servants. And guess what else he didn't spare? His children. He took everything from Job. You know, we got stockbrokers jumping out of windows committing suicide because of financial misfortune. Financial things happening over my lifetime. I don't know how many stories I've read like that, where because people are in a horrible financial situation, and it's real, it's a horrible financial situation, they take their life. Why? They don't see hope. There's no hope in their situation. This is what the enemy has done to Job, but he went further and he took out his family. He has his wife left. You want to talk about sorrow and trauma and knowing true pain? You lose a child. That's pain. And how does Job respond? He comes out and says, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. He was immovable. He was immovable. And so the devil doesn't like this. The devil comes back and challenges the Lord and says, skin for skin, all that a man has, he will give for his own life. Stretch out your hand, touch his flesh and bone, and he will curse you to your face. So how does the Lord respond? We read in verse 6, and the Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life. The enemy of all enemies had gone out now, and he has gone after Job. Do you think he showed Job mercy? He afflicted him with unimaginable pain and suffering from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. Incurable disease. No physician, no person could come and help him. There was no relief. I mean, and this is on top of losing everything, where he has nothing. Let me be clear on something. I look at Job's life. If anyone was ever given a reason to take his life, Job is that person. How did Job feel? I want you to relate to this man who's experiencing unimaginable suffering, and I want you to hear it from his mouth. This is what we read. In Job 3, this is him. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. Job spoke and said, may the day perish on which I was born, and the night in which it was said, a male child is conceived. Why? Why did I not die at birth? Why did I not perish when I came from the womb? Or why was I not hidden like a stillborn child, like infants who never saw the light? He said, it would have been better for me to die. Not even just out of the womb, it would have been better to die in the womb than to experience what I'm experiencing right now. This is his own mouth. It's not me building this up. This is how he feels. And then we read this. Pay close attention. Why is light given to him who is in misery, and life to the bitter of soul who long for death? He longed for death. It's not a misprint. You can go to the Hebrew. You can read it. Job is longing for death. He is at his breaking point. This is it. He is in the valley of the shadow of death. He's plummeted into despair, and there's no relief. He longs for it. Question: does he take his life? And we read this, but it does not come. And search for it more than hidden treasures. This guy is searching for death more than hidden treasures. It's the number one thing in his mind. This is what he wants. But he says it doesn't come. Why? Because he doesn't take his life. It wasn't an option. He held fast to the Lord. He's not going to breach the sixth commandment. It's not an option. This is not what he's thinking. Yes, he wished for death, but he never conceived. There's no narrative that as you go through this entire story, there's no narrative that this is what he considered doing at all. Amazing. Let's take it a step further. We read this. Then his wife said to him, "Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die." His own wife has come to him and said, "Take your life. Take your life. End it. Give up. Curse God and be done." His wife just came and said, "Your life is not worth living, and your God is not worth serving." And I'm going to tell you, this was the very moment the devil labored for. This is the very moment that he strategized to come to Job at the lowest point in his life, when he is most vulnerable, when he is past his breaking point, past hanging by a thread, comes in through his wife, hoping to accomplish what he set out to do, for Job to turn his back on God and to take his life. This is what he wanted. And I'm going to tell you right now, don't think for one moment he's not coming after you. That he's not going to come after you to try to convince you of whatever your situation is, tell you that there is no hope, there is no love, that you are completely worthless. There's no way out, there's only one answer. Reject God, reject his word, and take your life. Are you prepared for that war? Are you prepared to battle? Because when you plummet into that midst of despair, that's when he's going to go to work on you. You know what the thing about it is, and I've talked to people who have been open about being challenged with the whole notion of taking their life. I've talked about it in the lies that the enemy sows to build them up to that moment where they start processing these things of just ending it. You know what I have found? Every single time, every example, the devil didn't share what happens after they take their life. That little tidbit of information is withheld. That when you leave this life, in breach of the second commandment, you take your life, what happens after? I'll tell you what happens after, so that you never forget. You will wake up to judgment. And where the wicked, the abominable, the unbelieving, the idolaters, and the murderers, they will be judged. And everyone who has rejected their hope in the Lord and trusting him and have not held fast to his word, they will be hurled into a lake which burns with fire, and there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. This is what he's not telling you. So you think he's telling you, I'm going to solve all my problems. I'm going to run away from all of this. I'm going to escape this and everything's going to be okay, when you will actually expedite your judgment. That is a scary reality. How does Job respond? A man who is suffering. I don't know anyone, at least not today, that has gone through what Job has gone through. To be at this depths of despair, this level, this is how Job responds. But he said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity?" And all this, Job did not sin with his lips. The only way Job could say something like that is if he is connected to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. If he actually believes this. How was he able to do it? And I could tell you, you go to Job 19:25, "Ve'ani yadati go'ali chai," and I know my Redeemer lives. This is what he knew. He knew the power of God. He knew the goodness of God, and he acknowledged that all the goodness that he had ever had come from him. I should just be, the willingness that I have to accept his blessing, I must be willing to accept the pain, the sorrow, and the suffering. Profound wisdom. I want to build on this and take you to a Psalm of David. He says, "Attend to me and hear me. I am restless in my complaint and moan noisily." David is beside himself. Why? Because the voice of the enemy, because of the oppression of the wicked, for they bring down trouble upon me, and in wrath they hate me. The adversary has unleashed hell on David. And notice what is troubling him, literally, the voice of the enemy. It is the voice of the enemy. How do you combat that? How are you warring against that? Because the war begins here, and I promise you, it ends here. Suicide is determined here. That's where it's determined. The war, that's where it is. How are you doing this? Well, let's look at David. He says, "My heart is severely pained within me, and the terrors of death have fallen upon me. Fearfulness and trembling have come upon me, and horror has overwhelmed me." How do you describe what he's talking about, then how he has, that he's beyond overwhelmed? "So I said, oh, that I had wings like a dove, I would fly away and be at rest." This is a reflection of literally what Job had spoken. David wants escape, and many would tell you that actually what's being discussed here is death. This is what's on his heart. This is how far David has been pushed. "Indeed, I would wander far off and remain in the wilderness. I would hasten my escape from the windy storm and the tempest." When people are listening to the lies of the enemy in regard to this horrific crime, a horrific deception, that suicide is the answer, they're trying to escape. They're trying to escape whatever has befallen them. And there could be some serious things. And there are, for people that go through with that adhere to that lie. But I want to show you how David responds in the moment, even when his heart is vulnerable and is telling you, "I want out. I don't want to be a part of any of this." What is the solution in that moment that the devil is whispering in your ear? This is the only way. This is the solution. "As for me, I will call upon God, and the Lord shall save me. Evening and morning and at noon, I will pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice." He gives his heart and his mind to the living God. He does not compromise. He does not give in to his flesh. He does not give in to the lie. He doesn't do it. I want to take you to the book of Isaiah. And if you've been with me long enough, you know one of my favorite spiritual warfare stories ever is the story of Hezekiah when the king of Assyria comes up against Hezekiah. And you really need to understand the backdrop here. Assyria was the global superpower. No kingdom has stood against Assyria. They've decimated everything. Further backdrop is this. Hezekiah is the king of Judah. All the fortified cities in Judah have been taken out by Assyria. There's one left, Jerusalem. That's the only city left. And now the king, Sennacherib, has set his sights to go up there and to take it. And so he sends his emissary, the Rabshakeh, who is a typology of the Antichrist. He sends him and he says, then the Rabshakeh said to them, this is meaning the Jewish people in Jerusalem, the emissaries of Hezekiah, say now to Hezekiah, thus says the great king, the king of Assyria, what confidence is this in which you trust? You have the spirit of Antichrist coming to the people of God and saying, literally, why is Hezekiah holding it? What is this confidence in which you trust? He goes on, I say you speak of having plans and power for war, but they are mere words. Now in whom do you trust that you rebel against me? This is exactly what the enemy does. What the spirit of death, the spirit of suicide, the spirit of Antichrist does, comes into our minds and tries to convince us, oh, you say you're a Christian, you say you follow Yeshua, you say you really follow the word, but you know as well as I do, the Lord doesn't hear your prayers. And don't think for a moment that he actually cares about you, or that your words matter to him, or that when you go to pray, he's going to receive it. None of it's going to happen. All you have is words. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and he's coming to take your faith. The only way these horrific acts of suicide happen is the enemy is gutting the people of faith so that he has full access to take advantage of them. It's absolutely horrifying. He goes on, beware, this is the spirit of Antichrist, lest Hezekiah persuade you, saying, the Lord will deliver us. Has any one of the gods of the nations delivered its land from the hand of the king of Assyria? Oh, there's so much to talk about here, because here Hezekiah is a typology of the shepherds, of watchmen that go forth and they preach that there is hope in Yeshua. There is hope. We can trust in him. He is the great deliverer. We can trust in his word. And the spirit of Antichrist comes on the scene. Don't listen to all those pastors and preachers and teachers that are telling you, oh, you have hope. Why don't you just turn your eyes and to look at the world, and there's other people in your situation. Nothing happened. There was no hope for them. Why would there be hope for you? It's the spirit of Antichrist that's coming in to destroy your hope, your faith in Yeshua. And again, I'm going to tell you, the war will be won and lost right here. You need to get armed to the teeth in your faith to push this off. You know, if I was to ask how many of you have ever had suicidal thoughts, ever, most of your hands would go up at some point in your life, whether in your youth or even older. You know, I didn't even get into share the demographics that exist with older people committing suicide and doing it for multiple reasons that, you know, frankly speaking, that there is no hope. They got diagnosed with an incurable disease, and they don't want to live in that capacity. Because in their mind, there's no hope, there's no healing. Let's just end it. And I could go after example after example after example. The Apostle Paul says this. He says, for though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty in God for pulling down strongholds. Verse 5. Casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. I guarantee you, I promise you, the enemy is going to try to take up residence in your heart and in your mind and to convince you of every lie that he can conceive so that he can convince you there is no hope, that Yeshua doesn't love you, that nobody else loves you, that you're worthless, you're a piece of garbage. You'd be doing the world a favor by ending your life. You have to take every thought captive. We cannot, the moment, listen to me, and And I'm not just talking to our young. I'm talking to the young, the old, and the in-between. The moment that adversary attempts to plant that wicked, disgusting thought in your head, you take it captive, you go to the Word, and you remind him of the promises of God. The truth that there is power in Yeshua and that you have hope regardless of what happens to your flesh. You have hope. You hold the line. I love what David says. Listen to this. Many are they who say of me, there is no help for him in God. He recognizes that all the people around him are telling him there's no hope. There's no help for him in God. God's not going to rescue him. Yeshua doesn't care. He's not coming to your rescue. David heard the voice of the enemy. And how does he respond? But you, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory, and the one who lifts up my head. He declares his faith in the God of Israel. That's where David goes. Psalm 116, verse 3. The pains of death surround me, and the pains of Sheol laid hold of me. I found trouble and sorrow. The psalmist, he's at death's door. Sheol, he's on his deathbed here. And what is the response? Then I called upon the name of the Lord. O Lord, I implore you, deliver my soul. He calls upon the name of the Lord. This is the response, though being at death's door. My soul melts from heaviness. Strengthen me according to your word. The psalmist, again, he's hurting. He's in despair. His heart is melting with heaviness. And where does he go to get his strength? He goes to the word. You cannot possibly read this enough. Certainly you cannot read this enough in this dark and wicked and vile generation where you can see suicide numbers off the charts. They're not getting better, it's getting worse. I want to bring to the table 3 men, all mentioned in Scripture, all had a place in ministry. And yet all 3 of them commit suicide. And you think about this, that there is suicide mentioned in the Word. And they were known by God, and they served God. And yet this happened. And so this is a very real thing. To think that the church should say that they're impervious to this action of suicide is delusional. The Bible tells us otherwise. You know what I've been seeing? There's a trend. Something that I never heard growing up. Pastors taking their life. Pastors are committing suicide. The very ones that are supposed to stand in the pulpit and proclaim the life and salvation is in Yeshua Jesus. And now the devil is convincing shepherds there's no hope. That is an amazing thing to me. I want to take you to 1 Samuel. Let's look at this. Then Saul said to his armor bearer, draw your sword and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised men come and thrust me through and abuse me. But his armor bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. I want to stop right there. When you think about euthanasia, assisted suicide, he wouldn't do it. Saul wanted it. He said, kill me, take me out. He wouldn't do it. And that was wise. So what'd Saul do? Saul goes on, therefore Saul took a sword and fell on it. Saul committed suicide. Let me take you to the second man in Scripture. We're going to jump to 2 Samuel. This is Ahithophel. Now the advice of Ahithophel, which he gave in those days, was as if one inquired at the oracle of God. So was all the advice of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom. You'll be hard-pressed to find a man that has been decorated in a way like Ahithophel, who served David. whose advice was likened to the oracle of God. Incredible. Well, what do we read about Ahithophel? Well, here's the deal. There's Absalom, the son of David, engorged with pride and treason, moved to take the throne. David has to go flee. And Ahithophel has this advice to give Absalom. And so we read what that advice is. Moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Now let me choose 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue David tonight. I will come upon him while he is weary and weak, and make him afraid. And all the people who are with him will flee, and I will strike only the king." This guy who served David, one of the wisest men on the face of the planet at the time, defects to Absalom, and now he hatches a plan to go take David out. Now, what's interesting is his plan is not accepted because God planted David's friend Hushai into the midst to give counsel, and because this was God's heart, they chose the counsel of Hushai. And when Ahithophel found out that his counsel wasn't received, that his plan to go murder the anointed of the Lord, David, this is what happens. Now, when Ahithophel saw that his advice was not followed, he saddled a donkey and arose and went home to his house, to his city. Then he put his household in order, and he hanged himself and died. And he was buried in his father's tomb. It sounds vaguely familiar to another story in the New Testament of another man who betrayed not David, but the Mashiach ben David, Judas Iscariot. Betrayed him with the intent of what? Putting him to death. Exactly like Ahithophel. And what did he do? Then Judas threw down the pieces of silver, 30 pieces, in the temple and departed, and he went and hanged himself. Now here's what I want you to consider. The Bible does address men. I mean, think about Judas. Judas was in the ministry. He went out healing. We know for a fact, scriptural fact, he went out healing, casting out demons, professing Jesus as the only way. Yeshua is the King of Israel. And yet, at the end, he rejected the Lord. He rejected him. So let's look at these guys for a second that committed suicide. You have Saul, you have Ahithophel, and you have Judas. I want to point out a common denominator amongst all of them. It's interesting. Every one of them had murder in their heart. What did Saul try to do to David? Tried to kill him multiple times. David is the typology of Yeshua, who would be called the Mashiach ben David. Ahithophel, what did Ahithophel do? He went out and tried to murder. His plan was to murder David, a typology of Yeshua, murder in the heart. And what did Judas do? Yeah, he literally walked it out to betray him, to be put to death. Every one of these guys rejected the Lord. You can see Saul's life. He was rebellious against the commandment of the Lord over and over and over again. You could see the heart of Judas, who went out and proclaimed, "Oh, I'm really concerned about the poor." When the woman, dumped that beautiful perfume upon for his burial for Yeshua and honored him, he wanted that. He thought that should have been sold to the poor. He didn't care about the poor. You see a departure in every one of these cases from the Lord. And I'm telling you, that's what's leading the charge here. That's what's leading the charge in this culture of death. It's rebellion against Yeshua, where you were totally reject him. In this subject, my heart breaks. My heart breaks for how active the devil is in trying to take each and every one of you out. This is why I intercede. But I'm going to tell you something right now. If you're one of those that are hiding the devil's lies in your heart and in your mind, and you're not bringing this out, and you're not confiding in someone, and you're not confiding in the leadership, you've got to get this filth, these lies, out on the table. They need to be rebuked. They need to be renounced by you, and you need to run to the Lord. This is not a game that you're called to play, where you allow these thoughts to take root in your heart. You will experience them. I know that. I know many people that you would never conceive. I lost my aunt this way. It was the only time in my life I saw my dad cry. It rocked our family in a horrible way. I've sat with families that have lost their loved ones. That means so much to them. Their lives rocked in a horrible way. We can't let that stuff even happen here on any level. We don't want to see you taken away from us. We don't want to mourn over you believing a lie. You've got to get this stuff out. And so what I'm going to do is we have a special testimony today. I want to bring Dan up. And Dan is he's going to talk a little bit about his experience. And it's important. And when Dan gets done, we're going to go into a time of prayer. And this is where we go to war. We do what the word says. We petition the Lord and the hope that is in Yeshua. So why don't you come up, brother?
Told you it'd be heavy today. So much of what Daniel said today is so true, and I've almost experienced every aspect of what Daniel's brought up today. And the first thing I want to talk about is inside this community. And you guys heard me say it before. Teen Serve, the first time I went to Teen Serve, I went with expectations. And I came back knowing that I needed not to go with expectations. When I went to Teen Serve for the first year in 2014, we had 17 youth that went with us that year. Lord opened my eyes real quick. We had issues in our community. We had about 50% of the teens that went that year that were thinking suicide. It's in our community. And that's part of the story you guys have never heard, I've never shared, of why the Lord said, right here. Don't be looking elsewhere. You got issues inside the community. Think about that. 8 kids out of 17 thinking suicide. So that week, what the Lord was pressing on me as we were going through that week was that I need to share my testimony. And so I shared my testimony, and now I'm going to share it with you guys. Some of you have heard part of my testimony. Some of you have heard. I don't think many of you heard it all. So here goes it all. It was November of 1985. I was only 11 years old. These days, what's crazy is I remembered the details of all these days when this was going on. It's amazing how much details I know. I mean, 11 years old, that was quite a while ago. But I was out playing with my friends, and I ended up going home to a voicemail from my mom. We didn't have cell phones back there. There wasn't pagers. You know, there's answer machines. And there's a message from my mom, and I had to call my mom back. She was at my grandma's. And my mom's father decided that it was time to take his life. And I remember her telling me this, and I remember riding my bike from my house down to my grandpa's house, crying, getting down there. And I remember seeing my grandma and my mom crying, her brother's there crying, because my grandpa was only 63 years old. But my grandpa thought he was a burden on people because he was sick. He had emphysema. He was on oxygen. He had people waiting on him day and night. And he thought it would be easier if he just took his life so they didn't have to suffer taking care of him. The one thing I remember from that is that no one cared about taking care of him. They cared that he wasn't there. My grandpa didn't realize that it wasn't a burden. He didn't put a burden on him while he was alive. He put a burden on him when he took his life. And he didn't realize that. But that's not the end of my story. As most of you know, my family, you know my wife, I have 4 kids. I have a sister that has a husband and has 3 kids. The only thing is my mother has never met any of them. In February of 2000, my mom decided to take her life. She was going through depression. She had anger. She had bitterness. My parents were divorced. Life wasn't what she thought it would be. And there was multiple attempts before this. But this year, in 2000, she succeeded. And she doesn't get to see any of her grandkids. She didn't get to see her kids get married. She didn't even meet her future daughter-in-law. First time my wife met my mom was at her funeral. The destruction that comes from that is it's crazy. And I remember that day too. The details, they don't go away. I remember my dad showing up to my work at 2 o'clock in the morning as I was working 3rd shift, and I'm looking at him going, "Why are you here?" And he proceeds to tell me that my mom passed away. I also remember standing outside the house as we're going in, and I take a big sigh of relief or deep breath, and my dad's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay." And I go, "But I'm worried about my sister." My sister was already upstairs at her house. I remember walking into the room, seeing my sister, my mom's brother, my mom's boyfriend, all sitting there waiting for the people to come get her body. I remember me and my sister walking into her room and saying goodbye, even though she couldn't hear us. Those details are there, and they don't go away. And there's all these different sides of what it does, and it's all the lies from the devil. And this is probably the first time, I think this might be the first time I ever shared the whole story, but bitterness and anger, depression, this is where it leads you. This is where the devil wants you. And the thing is you think that it relieves your pain, but you don't realize the pain that it leaves behind, the destruction that comes after that. And to hear Daniel put up that statistic that 6 people are affected by that, I just think of my sister's family and my family. We have 6, I got 4 kids, she's got 2. And it's like, wow, 6 kids affected because they didn't have their grandma. It's a serious subject. And so I know Daniel's going to come up here and he's going to close us in prayer. And I encourage you, if you guys anyone has any of these things that they need to get off the chest, I encourage you to come up and seek prayer. Get help. Start talking to people. Start talking about your struggles. Because the number one thing the enemy wants you to keep you to yourself. He doesn't want you to get help. He doesn't want you to talk about your struggles.
into a time of prayer, and man, if you listen to that message, if you're a parent, you better start praying. You better start locking it down, because the enemy is convincing someone every 30 seconds. And we cannot afford to have open doors to the world in our homes. It is time to lock it down. And youth, if this is something that the enemy is trying to take advantage of, you get it out. You go find your leaders. You talk to mom and dad, have them pray over you. You get the lies out on the table, and you get into the word, and you start praying, because this is going to lead you to weeping and gnashing of teeth. There's nothing in this life, whatever pain, whatever suffering we're going to experience in life is nothing compared to what is going to come at the judgment. And again, remind yourself, these are the little details that the devil doesn't want to tell you. And so I'm going to want everyone laboring in intercessory prayer as we go into this time.